Welcome to Chapter 10 of A Writer's Journey. I know last time I told you I was going to start talking about the line edit process that I had to go through, or actually I had my editor go through, but I forgot something about the macro process that came out of it, so I thought today it might be a little bit shorter than my usual ones, but then who would complain? And that was the issue of the length. It turns out, depending on what genre you're writing for, there are certain acceptable lengths. I was writing for sort of a Christian thriller fiction kind of thing, and the acceptable length is around 100,000 words. There's both, that's sort of kind of near the top, and then there's sort of a bottom number, but I never worried about that because that was not my problem. But when I sent my editor my version, it was 130,000 words. And I knew it was over the limit, but I thought, well, this is so good, they won't even notice. They'll just keep reading through. No, that's not the way it worked. And she came back and she said, this is too long. You're going to have to start cutting stuff. And I don't know what kind of writer you might be, because you may be the kind of writer that writes too little, and then you have to add stuff, or the kind of writer that writes too much, and then you have to cut stuff. That's me. And frankly, I think it's easier to cut stuff than to add stuff into it. At least it is for me. That being said, it's still not easy to cut stuff because I thought it was all necessary to the integrity of the novel, which is a concept I had to give up pretty quickly. It's what I think is the integrity of the novel is not necessarily what others would think, and I had to come to that realization early on, and so I had to be willing to cut. That was hard. I had to look through scenes. I had to see if I could maybe shorten some scenes, and in some points I just had to take a whole scene and cut it out, and that was hard at first because I had poured my life's blood into each one of these scenes, and to say one's just totally useless to the plot, that was a lot of work, but I had to cut it, so I eventually got used to doing that. I put things aside, maybe I'd use it again later or something like that, but I cut it. I took it out of my novel. Now, I also ran into a kind of another problem, because in some of the places where I was telling and she said you need to show, it was took more words to show than to tell. And so I sort of ran into, if I change this show into if I change this tell into a show, I'm going to have to cut something else somewhere. And so that became a dilemma at times. But eventually I cut it down. I cut it down quite a bit. Probably came in at like 94,000 words. So that's about 36,000 words I cut out, which is a book, In some genres, that's what it is. But then, when she went and looked through it again, she said, well, you should probably put something here or something here. So I ended up having to put some other stuff in. And the thing I didn't go back to what I wrote before and say, okay, I can reinsert it. I looked at what she said needed work, needed maybe an addition here or there, and I came up with entirely new scenes that were far better than what I had cut. Because I was getting into the groove of writing this and understanding some of the rules and principles for good writing in this case. And so it all worked out. And then when I finally finished the whole thing, and we got through everything, including the line edit, which I'll talk about next week, it came in at 96,800 words. So it pushed the 100,000 word boundary, but not by a whole lot. I mean, it wasn't, there's still some space there in case I needed to do something, but I didn't really. 96,800 words really put together a pretty good novel, is what I thought. And I never gave another look at the stuff I had to cut out. And it just fits together better. It's just all around better. But that is a problem, cutting stuff that you wrote. You just have to be willing to do that. I guess the terminology in the field is get rid of your little darlings. And in some instances they were my darlings. But I don't miss them at all. Now when I read the novel, I don't even notice it, because it fits together so well. So I guess the lesson here is to be willing to cut, to make drastic cuts. I mean, 36,000 words is a lot in my case. But maybe you won't write so far over the limit. Who knows? But be ready, be prepared to do that. Be prepared to add if you write too little, and be thinking about maybe where your editor says, "Hey, this needs some more explanation," or "I'd like another scene here," things like that. So that's the lesson for today. And so, have fun writing.